Despite being 6 mana, Coveted Jewel is one of the best cards in Vintage and recently won the biggest online Vintage tournament. When it enters the battlefield, you draw 3 cards and it taps for 3 mana of any color. At first, this doesn't seem great, but when you have the best, most efficient artifact ramp of all time, it is very easy to cast it on turn 1, flicker it with Displacer Kitten, or copy it with Phyrexian Metamorph for some insane combo kills. This is today's combo. We're going to draw our whole deck and either win the game by taking infinite turns with Time Vault and Manifold Key, or we're going to kill them with Karn and Lattice from the sideboard. Any other cards that you don't know in this list I will clarify when we cast them in the video, because you're going to watch me draw a load of cards and make a load of mana, so you want to watch until the end. To start the first round, we're on the draw and we have to mulligan a no land 7, but our 6 is pretty decent. Having Ancestral Recall, a load of mana sources is what we want to have, because not only can we cantrip, we can also make a lot of mana on turn 1. We bottom the island and the opponent starts off with a turn 1 Trinisphere from their Mishra's Workshop. Trinisphere is one of the most broken cards in Vintage and it is restricted, meaning that if you want to play it, you can only play 1. And what it does is it makes all spells cost at least 3 mana, and in a format where everyone wants to pay 0 or 1 mana for their spells, this is very good. Now, because we have a Mishra's Workshop of our own, we can actually work around it, so we're not in a terrible spot. I decide to play both my Mana Vault and my Soul Ring, and that's because I'm trying to pump up my Tolarian Academy, so I have a load of blue mana on my next turn, and a load of artifacts in play. The opponent is almost limited to 1 spell a turn, so they play an Urza Saga and a Patchwork Automaton and pass back. In our draw step, we take 1 damage from the Mana Vault and find a Mox Sapphire. Trying to pump this Tolarian Academy as much as possible, I play the Black Lotus for 3 mana, and now we can play our Tolarian Academy, cast the Mox Sapphire for 3, have 2 leftover mana so we can tap the Mox Sapphire and use 3 for Ancestral Recall, and hold up Force of Will because of the Black Lotus. Now we do have many ways to kill next turn with Displacer Kitten, but I won't spoil it until the opponent takes their turn. The opponent decides to make a massive board, casting an Edelcyst, making a token with Urza Saga, and bashing in with the Patchwork Automaton. To start off our turn, we take 1 damage in our draw step from our Mana Vault and find an Ancient Tomb off the top. Now we're going to start off this turn with Displacer Kitten. What's good is Displacer Kitten flickers a card whenever we cast a spell, and this Mana Vault can be flickered to untap it, meaning we can then tap it for 3 more mana. I could break down what's happening more, but it's better to just show you. First, let's start off with a Bolas' Citadel, the best card in our hand and will let us dig through our whole deck very quickly. We flicker the Mana Vault and find a Mox Emerald off the top, we have to pay 3 mana to cast it, and then we can flicker the Mana Vault again. Already, we found a Coveted Jewel off the top, now we can cast Coveted Jewel and just continuously flicker this Coveted Jewel until we draw our whole deck and don't have to worry about mana at all. After casting a Demonic Tutor, the opponent concedes the game and we move on to sideboarding. Before the next game, I just want to say if you enjoy my content and want to see more videos, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, as a lot of people forget to click it and it helps me out a lot. Going into boarding, we want the Hurkyl's Recalls and the Wormcoils and just take out a load of clunky artifacts and spells that don't work well against their deck. Game 2 wasn't very interesting. It's equivalent of losing to Blood Moon in Modern because the opponent had 2 Sphere of Resistance in play and also used a Chalice of the Void to lock me out for most of the game. Now I untapped my Mana Vault to set up for a Wormcoil Engine next turn, which would win the game, but then the opponent followed up with a Null Rod, making my cards all useless. Going into Game 3, Vintage is really a format that cares about if you're on the play or on the draw. Like this hand here is insane because I have Black Lotus, Force of Will, and Karn the Great Creator against an artifact deck, so it's going to be very difficult for my opponent to even do anything here to stop me from disrupting their whole game plan. So I slam the Karn and get the Sensei's Divining Top that I sideboarded out just because it's a card that we can cantrip with if they have any disruption. The opponent starts off with a Patchwork Automaton, as that's a threat that attacks Karn. I've got a Force of Will it, and they follow up with a Mox Jet and pass back the turn. What's good here is because they played the Mox Jet, even though it's pointless in this Karn the Great Creator, I can now Phyrexian Metamorph, copy the Mox Jet, then play my Mox Ruby, and I'm able to activate this Urza Saga. Then I can plus on their Mox to destroy it, and leave me with the Saga token that I'm going to make on their end step. Interestingly though, the opponent wastelands my Mishra's Workshop, and then follows up with a Null Rod. That turns off all the artifacts, but I can make a Construct token with my Urza Saga. While I can't activate my Urza Saga again, I can go get another artifact, and now I'm flooding the board, got a massive construct, and they just couldn't beat it this game. It's so funny that an artifact deck can play Null Rod, but we win this game by attacking with the construct. Going into the next round, we have to mulligan to 6, but have a very nice 6 with no lands but 3 Moxes. I'm going to bottom the second paradoxical outcome, and we can see what the opponent wants to do on their first turn. Now it smells like a mirror when they play a Soul Ring, a Mana Vault, and a Manifold Key. So we need to do something this turn, or we could easily lose next turn to a Coveted Jewel from their side of the board. Now what makes my life easy is the opponent F6s, meaning that they don't have a Force of Will in their hand, so now we can Time Walk, Phyrexian Metamorph the Mana Vault, then on our extra turn, we draw Sensei's Dividing Top, so can play that and then play Paradoxical Outcome, but the opponent just concedes before I can even cast the spell. Now the mirror is very toxic, and that's because it all matters who gets their Coveted Jewel down first. And in game 2, we're on the draw, we had a turn 1 Trinisphere, but that didn't stop the opponent playing 2 Coveted Jewels on their second turn. To make things worse, they did pass back with mana up, and that's because they had a counterspell for my Phyrexian Metamorph when I tried to copy their Coveted Jewel. So this was a very quick game 2, it's a very toxic mirror, and there's not much skill apart from hoping you have Force of Will and a fast Coveted Jewel in your opening hand. Going into game 3 though, we have a very good opening hand with Black Lotus Tolarian Academy and a ton of mana. Now as we have both Paradoxical Outcome and Demonic Tutor, I decide that I'm going to Demonic Tutor for Tinker so that I don't lose a lot of artifacts for the Tolarian Academy, and I also don't have to sacrifice my Black Lotus. You could have Demonic Tutor for Coveted Jewel and sacked your Black Lotus, but I'd rather get Tinker and sack the Mox Opal and keep the Black Lotus around. But it didn't really matter anyways because the opponent had a Mindbreak Trap to counter it as a 1-for-1. Technically a 2-for-1 because I had to sack the Mox Opal. Anyways, I'm not going to waste any more time. The opponent followed up with the Sensei's Dividing Top, and when we tried to cast the best card in our hand, they had a Force of Negation, so now we're just so low on mana, they're so high on cards and card selection, we lost this game. This mirror is just really toxic, and there really is not much decisions to make apart from, can I have a load of counters in hand, plus functioning mana. Going into the next round, our opening hand is insane because it's a turn 2 combo kill if the opponent doesn't have interaction. So I start the game off with the Sensei's Dividing Top and a Mox, which scries to find a Mox Opal on the top of the deck, which is exactly what we need. Nothing else we can do but pass back, and the opponent starts with the Wasteland and ships it back to us. Having 6 mana and a Coveted Jewel in hand, it's time to combo. Now I don't know why, but Magic Online kept pairing me against this artifact deck. I played 2 leagues with this deck, and this was the only league where I played it the least. 3 times. Yes, the other league I played it 4 times. So everyone on Magic Online seems to love this deck. In the second game, I sadly lost because they had a degenerate play on turn 1, and we can't fight the turn 1 plays because they're on the play. And then in game 3, I won by 1 construct again. So I think you can see how this matchup goes, and there isn't really much to it because they disrupt our combo so much, we typically win from Urza's Saga and other means rather than the combo. But throughout this league, my only loss was to the mirror. In round 4, again, not only did I play against the same person by the way, I played against the same deck, but my opponent was dying to their own Mana Crypt. Look, they go from 9 to 6, and then they go from 6 to 3, and then after 2 coin flips, they die to the Mana Crypt. So it's quite insane that my opponent locked me out of the game and died to their own card. In round 5, we assembled a very cool 3-card combo in this deck. We had a Mystic Forge on the table, started off with a Coveted Jewel, and the opponent used Force of Will. But then, we had Displacer Kitten, plus Mystic Forge, plus Sensei's Dividing Top, and any artifact that makes mana, and now we can sack the Sensei's Dividing Top to put it on top of our deck, recast it with an artifact on the table, then flicker an artifact to get us back 1 mana. This lets us draw our whole deck for free because of Mystic Forge, Sensei's Dividing Top, and Displacer Kitten, but the opponent conceded before I could execute the full combo. Overall, I 4-1 this league, winning 5 chests, so I'll open them at the end of this video for you gambling degenerates, and I open this cool Urza. As always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.